Today, we need to talk about something of a misunderstanding that has happened within the last 24 to 48 hours in the Nintendo YouTube sphere when it comes to a report that is circulating that many were suggesting might actually be the confirmation that Nintendo is getting ready to talk about Nintendo Switch 2 officially to investors at their next financial briefing. And while that very well may indeed be the case, I'm not saying it won't, there has been a document that seemed like it was outlining that this would come up at the upcoming investors meeting. And this document is actually referencing an investors briefing that's already taken place in the past, last fiscal year, in fact, and it is not any kind of indication that Nintendo will or won't be mentioning Nintendo Switch 2 at this upcoming meeting. However, we don't have to wait long to find that out, and obviously I will be discussing anything notable if they do mention anything that is of interest overnight tonight and into early tomorrow morning. But we'll get on the same page with all of these details and what to expect when it comes to any kind of Nintendo Switch 2 official announcement. Before we do, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification to join Sunbro Nation if you're new here. And we have to first start off by hopping over to a corporate governance report from Nintendo that has been making the rounds online. Numerous different channels talking about this, different media outlets, even Jeff Grubb chiming in on it before kind of going back and correcting some of the information that was there. And the big piece that was picking up a lot of traction is this section of the document, which starts out reading details of the dialogue with shareholders. Dialogue-based IR activities conducted in the 2024 fiscal year, in addition to a corporate management policy briefing and 3 financial results briefings, the company conducted approximately 400 individual and group meetings combined with shareholders and institutional investors. The company also attended conferences and other events held by securities companies. Furthermore, the company held investor SR and ESG meetings, actively creating opportunity for dialogue with a broad range of institutional investors, both in Japan and outside of Japan, fund managers, analysts, ESG specialists, proxy voting representatives, and others to further their understanding of the company. Main dialogue topics and matters of interest to investors. Topics covered include financial results overview and business outlook, business momentum of Nintendo Switch, the next game console, and business impact of hardware transition, IP strategy, including the visual content business, capital policy, ESG, and sustainability initiatives. Now, some were taking this report to mean that Nintendo's already divulged the important information around their next-gen hardware and the transition to that to investors behind closed doors, so we might not hear anything at the investors briefing. And that is a very true possibility, because they don't necessarily have to go on record for the public to hear all of Nintendo's answers when being asked certain investor questions. Nintendo can do things like behind the scenes closed door meetings where they're going to share certain info that they don't share with the public. That is entirely a possibility. What this document is not, however, is an agenda for their upcoming financial briefing results, where we're going to learn all of the upcoming fiscal year forecasts and things like that. This is not Nintendo intending to share this at their upcoming financial briefing. This is actually talking about what they've already divulged, which is kind of the same old generic answer from what I can see. Now, again, we don't know about things that were for sure said behind closed doors, but you can see a post that adds a little bit of context where this was spreading around on our gaming leaks and rumors, and a user says the document provided by OP was published on March 27th and refers to that fiscal year just ended, fiscal year 2024. You can see it listed as such on Nintendo's own financial website, and then links that website. The specific section quoted here is part of the details of dialogue with shareholders, which is a summary of the topics that investors inquired about in all previous public investor meetings. They basically wrote that they discussed the next console when asked about it by investors in the fiscal year. The questions and answers are also available as documents on that portal I linked above, but in case anyone missed Nintendo's answer, it was always the same boring, we are looking at and developing new ways of playing and nothing more. So again, what this does not do is give us any kind of indication one way or another if Nintendo will bring up their new hardware at tomorrow's investors briefing, but it is not an agenda for them to do so, and it's also not necessarily confirmation that they've given any more info to investors other than those generic answers that we've always heard with their R&D ever evolving and their always researching and developing new hardware. And of course, the slide that showed like 20xx NX, some kind of new console hardware will launch, and Nintendo account and value-added services will roll forward. Like, we really don't have anything more concrete that's telling us that Nintendo has revealed more than that, although they very well could have in individual one-off meetings. But I am still in the mindset of tomorrow is a 50-50 chance on if we hear of anything of significance. So could they actually directly acknowledge to investors that because they are forecasting for the upcoming fiscal year, that yes, indeed, a portion of this forecast does factor in our next generation hardware, or no, a portion of this forecast does not factor in our next generation hardware, both of which you can read into, because they might be directly leaving out a portion of their forecast because they don't want to talk about their next gen hardware yet, and they may acknowledge it in that kind of way. The best kind of acknowledgement we could get as Nintendo fans, just waiting for any kind of official news from them, is exactly what they did back in the day with the Switch in 2016 when they were forecasting their 2017 fiscal year, where they just straight up said that their next gen console, the NX, would launch in March of 2017. Like, something like that would be incredible if they come out and say our next gen hardware, codenamed this, which we don't know the code name, and we did of the NX at that point in time, but if they told us that it will launch in March of 2025 at this investors briefing, that would obviously be huge. But I'm not really expecting Nintendo to go about it that direct. I am kind of thinking that Nintendo continues to play things close to their chest, and it's going to be more Furukawa talking about where they're at with business right now, and here's our forecasted numbers. We know that Nintendo Switch is in an interesting position due to the unprecedented demand and how long the life cycle has happened, and please stay tuned for more information as we are ready to share it about the next gen console. And then we really have to start asking the question, do we learn about this console before the potential of a June time Nintendo Direct, or is a June time Nintendo Direct just a lot of ports and remasters being revealed, kind of lining out the rest of 2024 for the current Nintendo Switch hardware, and we're really radio silent on next gen until something like that October timeframe, where they could do a big announcement and reveal. Maybe even in the September timeframe is when the acknowledgement comes, and then a trailer drops in October, the first look at the next gen console. Then we really start to ramp up and gear up for March of 2025, which seems like the more likely date than ever at this point in time. We also know that Nintendo wants to be able to manufacture plenty of these consoles to not have to deal with a scalping issue, and this may be another question that gets brought up that's referencing the next gen console as well. That is one of the rumored reasons, in fact, that Nintendo may have decided to shift this hardware up to March of 2025 to begin with, as it was initially apparently planned for a holiday 2024 release, and they may be wanting to avoid a scalping situation for fans, so they're taking additional time with the manufacturing process, making sure they have plenty of units ready to go when they are truly ready to launch this thing. But keep in mind, once we get into the mass manufacturing portion of this console, we're gonna see leaks happen one way or the other. Actually looking at the hardware like we do every time, we're just gonna have to determine if those are real or not. But you might remember the Switch Lite clamshell before it was officially announced. Everybody thought it was fake. Turns out that we were actually looking at a Nintendo Switch Lite iteration that we didn't know Nintendo was going to announce, but they did indeed end up announcing. So we're going to get closer and closer to all of this stuff as Nintendo gets closer to revealing their next generation hardware strategy with us. But until then, just go into everything with a very lowered expectations in terms of what we're going to learn. I'm thinking it's going to be a lot more corporate speak. There is that one-off chance that Nintendo directly acknowledges it with their numbers, or even just with a statement. So stay tuned here on the channel for all of that. We will be covering it as it breaks, hopefully. But that's where I want to hear from you guys at this point in the video. What do you make of all of this? Do you have any kind of hope or expectations that tomorrow we are going to be talking about some direct quotes from Furukawa referencing their next generation hardware, and maybe we even learn a code name or loose time launch window of the console? Or are you more expecting to walk away from this meeting with more of the same old, we're constantly researching and developing new hardware, and we'll share more when we're ready? What do you make of this governance report? Do you think that it's really indicating that Nintendo has given more information than we know about to their investors internally behind closed doors? Or do you think it's more of the same old, and really this doesn't give us any kind of indication on what's been shared with investors at this point in time? So thanks so much for watching the video today, everyone. Make sure you share all your thoughts and feelings, regardless if we agree or disagree, in the comments down below before you leave. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, turn on your notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.